There are truths you learn quickly, and there are truths that take 20 years to understand. Truths so powerful, so life-altering, that they require heartbreak, silence, failure, healing, obedience, and faith before the soul can carry them. You are about to hear one of those truths. For 2 decades I watched people rise and fall, gain and lose, pray and despair, fight and surrender. And in every story, whether of triumph or tragedy, one principle whispered beneath the surface. A principle so simple the mind doubts it, yet so exact it shapes every part of your life. A principle that, once learned, ends struggle. But before I tell you what it is, let me take you back to a moment you know too well. A moment when you tried so hard to make something happen. Working, worrying, pushing, but life would not move. You thought you were stuck. You were not stuck. You were misaligned. You were fighting a spiritual battle with physical strength. You were trying to force what only faith could open. And every time you pushed harder, the door closed tighter. Now hear me clearly. Nothing you force will ever be yours. Everything aligned will arrive without struggle. This is the wisdom that took me 20 years to truly understand. Let me give you a living scene. A woman once came to me desperate to change her circumstances. She prayed, but she prayed fearfully. She acted, but she acted anxiously. Her days were filled with effort, but none of it bore fruit. I told her gently, "You are trying to create without surrender, and creation without surrender becomes chaos." She thought surrender meant giving up, but true surrender means stepping aside so divine order can take its place. Within weeks of releasing her frantic grip, doors opened that months of striving could not budge. Now breathe for a moment, because what I am about to reveal holds the power to reorganize your entire life. Life does not change when you work harder. Life changes when you agree with truth. This single principle, agreement, took me 20 years to learn, because agreement requires a quiet courage. It requires releasing timelines. It requires trusting what you cannot see. It requires speaking a word and standing on it, even when the world shakes. Let me show you the danger of misunderstanding this law. If you spend the next year trying to force life into shape, forcing relationships, forcing opportunities, forcing money, forcing decisions, your soul will grow tired, your mind will grow scattered, and your spirit will shrink under the weight of self-will. And you will say, "Nothing works out for me," not realizing you blocked the very blessings meant for you. But imagine the opposite. Imagine waking tomorrow with a new posture, not frantic, not fearful, not forcing, but aligned. Imagine speaking a decree not as a wish, but as a command. What is mine comes to me easily. Divine order directs my steps. Imagine returning to that decree whenever fear rises. If you do this, life will begin rearranging itself around your agreement. Let me share a story that taught me this lesson more deeply than any book or sermon. A man, worn down by years of financial struggle, came seeking help. He tried everything: work, loans, advice, strategy, yet nothing held. I asked him one question. "What words do you speak over your life?" He confessed, "I always say, 'I'm trying my best, but it's never enough.'" There it was, 20 years of striving undone by one sentence of defeat. I gave him a new decree, one rooted in truth. I walk in abundance. The supply that belongs to me cannot be withheld. He repeated it daily, not with desperation, but with agreement. Within months, his life transformed. Not because the decree was magical, but because he finally stopped fighting and started aligning. Now let me speak to you with the clarity that comes only from long experience. Your life will change the moment your words stop contradicting your prayers. This is the wisdom of 2 decades. You can pray for abundance while speaking lack. You can pray for love while speaking bitterness. You can pray for direction while speaking confusion. And your life will always follow your words, not your wishes. This truth took 20 years because the world teaches you to doubt your power. It teaches you that circumstances rule you. It teaches you to rely on effort instead of alignment. And so you spend years learning and unlearning, rising and falling, until one day you finally understand. Your outer world is only the echo of your inner agreement. Let me take you into another moment you may not realize is sacred. You wake, and before you say a word, a familiar heaviness sits on your chest. You think, today will be hard. That one thought, spoken or unspoken, becomes the architect of your entire day. But imagine waking and saying instead, today unfolds in perfect ways. I am guided, protected, and supplied. You have just rewritten the day before it begins. Now listen with your whole heart as I reveal the distilled wisdom of 20 years. Speak only what you want multiplied. Release everything that is not yours. Expect your good without strain. And trust that divine order cannot fail you. Live by these 4 truths, and your life will take on the ease you have been longing for. But here is the warning. If you ignore this wisdom, if you keep forcing, fearing, and contradicting your own prayers, the next decade will repeat the last. Not because life is cruel, but because law is consistent. Yet if you embrace this wisdom, even imperfectly, even trembling, you will enter a life where miracles become normal, where guidance is unmistakable, where supply arrives before you ask, and where peace becomes your foundation rather than your reward. So, as this message continues, listen as someone who has finally reached the turning point. Listen as someone who is ready to stop striving and start aligning. Listen as someone who knows deep down there is a better way, and it begins with agreement. For it took me 20 years to learn this, but it will take you only one moment to begin living it. My friend, it has taken many souls 20 years, some even a lifetime, to learn the simple truth I am about to place before you. Yet once understood, it becomes the key that unlocks every closed door. It is the truth that ends striving, dissolves fear, and turns life from a burden into a guided unfolding. And though it took me many years to learn it, I place it before you now so that you need not wander as long as I once did. For life is not meant to be a wilderness journey. It is meant to be the promised land, entered through understanding and held through agreement with divine law. I have watched countless men and women come to me with tired eyes and tired hands, worn out from trying to force life to move. They believed, as the world teaches, that more effort meant more progress, that more force meant more success, that more worry somehow proved the sincerity of their intentions. They pushed at doors that would not open and tugged at threads that were never meant to unravel. And when nothing moved, they blamed themselves, believing they were unworthy, unlucky, or simply unable to change their lives. Yet the truth I discovered, quietly, steadily, over many years of observing human affairs, is this. Most people are not failing. They are simply misaligned. They are attempting to accomplish spiritual work with physical tools. They use force where the law requires surrender. They use fear where the law requires faith. They use anxiety where the law requires agreement. And every time they push harder, the universe, which obeys spiritual law and not human strain, simply steps aside and waits for alignment. I recall a woman who came to me in great distress. She wanted a change so desperately that she chased it with frantic energy. She prayed night and day, but her prayers were heavy with fear rather than light with expectancy. She acted constantly, yet every action was propelled by anxiety instead of guidance. When her efforts bore no fruit, she cried, "Miss Shinn, what more must I do?" And I said to her gently, "My dear, it is not more doing that you need. It is more agreeing. You cannot build the tower while contradicting the foundation." She looked puzzled, for she had believed her work proved her faith. But faith is not measured by action. Faith is measured by alignment. When she learned to speak a word and then stand upon it without wavering, her life began to shift so swiftly that she confessed she had spent years struggling when surrender would have placed her atop the mountain in days. This is what took me 20 years to fully understand. Life changes not when one strives, but when one agrees with truth. Truth is simple. Truth is exact. Truth requires no struggle, but agreement requires humility of spirit. It requires setting aside the old habit of controlling every detail and embracing the certainty that infinite intelligence knows the way. Agreement means that when one speaks a decree, one refuses to speak against it. Agreement means that when intuition whispers, one obeys without delay. Agreement means that when fear rises, one answers with faith rather than folding beneath the weight of former patterns. A man once told me, "Miss Shinn, I pray for supply, but supply does not come." I asked him, "What words do you speak over your affairs when prayer is finished?" He replied, "I often say I am trying my best, though nothing seems to work." There, in that single sentence, lay the contradiction. He prayed abundance and spoke lack. He prayed faith and spoke defeat. He attempted to ascend with one step while descending with the next. And the law, which is exact and impartial, simply followed his last decree. I gave him a new sentence to speak. I walk in abundance. What is mine by divine right cannot be withheld. He spoke it daily, not in desperation, but in quiet agreement. Within months, opportunities appeared where none had existed. Doors opened that had long remained shut, and he found himself living in a manner he once believed beyond his reach. He told me, "It feels as though life was waiting for me to stop fighting." I replied, "Life always waits for alignment. As you begin to practice this principle, you will notice a subtle yet unmistakable shift within yourself. Your breath deepens, your shoulders loosen, your gaze steadies. You stop hurling yourself against circumstances and instead stand in the calm authority of one who knows the law is working on their behalf. This shift does not go unnoticed by others. Your friends remark upon your composure. Your colleagues sense a new confidence. Even strangers treat you with a quiet respect, as though recognizing something settled and strong within you. For when a soul agrees with truth, the outer world mirrors that agreement in countless small ways. In my early years of teaching, I believed that people struggled because they did not know the right words to speak. But as time passed, I learned a deeper truth. People often speak the right words, yet cancel them immediately with their doubts. They pray for clarity and then declare themselves confused. They pray for supply and then announce their lack. They pray for protection and then speak of danger. And so their good remains at the gate, waiting for the moment when their word and their faith speak in one voice. Agreement is the joining of the two. Let me tell you of a woman whose life remained at a standstill for many years. She longed for a fresh beginning, yet every attempt she made seemed to crumble. She believed she was cursed by circumstance. Yet I observed that her every conversation contained the same refrain. Nothing ever changes for me. These words, spoken repeatedly, became the fortress that blocked her blessing. When she finally replaced that sentence with "everything is now changing for my highest good," the fortress dissolved. Within weeks, new people entered her life. New invitations appeared, and a sense of movement returned where stillness had lingered. She said, "Miss Shinn, I never realized my words were the wall." I answered, "Your words were the bricks. Your faith was the mortar. Now speak truth, and truth will build the path before you." This is why I say that learning to agree with truth is the greatest work a human being can undertake. It is the mastery behind every demonstration. It is the secret behind every answered prayer. It is the quiet power behind every peaceful life. Agreement means standing upon the spiritual fact even when the senses shout the opposite. Agreement means choosing the divine report instead of the worldly report. Agreement means expecting the door to open because you have spoken it open. And now, my friend, you are ready to walk in this truth. It took me 20 years to learn it. It will take you only the length of a sincere decision. For the law is already at work. You need only agree. My friend, once a soul learns that life cannot be forced but must be agreed with, the next great revelation dawns upon them. Every spoken word is an act of agreement. Every sentence is a seed. Every phrase is a decree. Every casual expression is a command issued to the universe, which stands ever ready to obey. This truth is so simple that the world ignores it, and so exact that the subconscious never fails to carry it out. It is the law I call the boomerang law of words. For whatever you send out returns to you, often multiplied and in ways you never imagined. Many people believe they are praying one thing while speaking another, and then wonder why their prayers remain unanswered. But the law is impartial. It does not respond to wishes. It responds to words. It returns to you not what you hope for, but what you declare. Thus, the tongue becomes the key to your destiny, and careless speech becomes the thief of many blessings. I once counseled a woman whose heart was full of disappointment. She believed misfortune had followed her all her life. She said to me with a bitter laugh, "Miss Shinn, I never expect anything good, so I cannot be disappointed." I replied softly, "My dear, you have exactly what you expect. Expectation is a mold into which life pours itself." She had made a mold of lack, and life, obedient as always, filled it. I instructed her to replace her old decree with, "I expect the unexpected. My good now flows to me from every direction." At first, she spoke it with hesitation, for the old words had become her identity. But as she persisted, something remarkable occurred. Unexpected invitations came. Unexpected kindness arrived. Unexpected opportunities opened. She returned to me nearly in tears, saying, "I never knew I had been prophesying my own disappointments." I answered, "Most people do. That is why the law must be learned consciously. One must understand that the subconscious does not choose. It does not say, 'I will take this word and ignore that word.' It accepts whatever is spoken repeatedly. Whether whispered, muttered, or shouted, whether said in jest or said in earnest, the subconscious takes every word as a directive. And once impressed, it rearranges circumstances, draws people, shapes events, and guides outcomes to fulfill the decree. This is why idle words are never truly idle. They create form. A man once came to me complaining of repeated setbacks. He said, "Miss Shinn, I work diligently, yet something always happens to undo my progress." I listened, and after a few moments he repeated aloud, without awareness, one of the most destructive phrases a person can utter. That is just my luck. There it was, the command, spoken again and again, that shaped the landscape of his affairs. I told him, "My dear, you have been calling forth misfortune as faithfully as a shepherd calls his flock." He was astonished. I instructed him to instead affirm, "What God has done for others, He now does for me, and more." This affirmation lifts one into a vibration of expectancy and dissolves the belief that good is reserved for others. Within months, he experienced a breakthrough so significant that even his peers remarked, "Your luck has changed." He smiled, knowing that luck had nothing to do with it. His word had changed. The scriptures tell of the walls of Jericho falling at the sound of the trumpet and the shout of the people. These walls did not crumble through human force. They fell through obedience to a spoken command. So it is with the walls in your own life. Walls of delay, walls of fear, walls of limitation. They do not fall through struggle. They fall when your words align with divine law. You must become keenly aware of the tone of your speech, for the tongue is often the last member to be converted. A person may begin to think positively, yet still speak the language of their old fears. They may pray for direction, yet tell friends, "I never know what to do." They may bless their finances in the morning, yet sigh by afternoon, "I never have enough." They may affirm love, yet declare, "People always disappoint me." These contradictions are the cracks through which demonstrations escape. If one truly desires change, one must guard their speech as a precious instrument. This is where the watchman at the gate comes into play. The watchman stands alert, listening for every word that tries to escape from the lips. If the word contradicts truth, the watchman stops it, replaces it, and speaks the decree of faith instead. Your speech must be disciplined, not rigidly, not fearfully, but consciously. I recall another case that illustrates this perfectly. A young woman came to me longing for more harmony in her home. She declared daily, "I live in peace," yet whenever a small conflict arose, she immediately exclaimed, "Nothing ever goes right." Her affirmation and her exclamation were at war. I advised her to catch herself in the moment of agitation and replace the destructive phrase with, "Peace reigns in my heart and home." She obeyed, and soon her household atmosphere shifted. Family members spoke more kindly, disputes resolved quickly, visitors commented on how serene her home felt. She said, "Miss Shinn, it feels as though someone has put soft music in my walls." I told her, "You did. You placed it there with your words." As your speech becomes aligned, others will notice a transformation. You will speak less impulsively. Your words will carry weight. People will pause when you speak, sensing that your speech is not casual but intentional. They will feel steadied by your calm declarations. They will trust your counsel, for ordered speech is the mark of an ordered soul. Let me tell you, too, that once you begin speaking truth, the universe hastens to adjust itself. Conditions move, people shift, circumstances align. You need not watch over your word to see how it will unfold. You need only speak it and hold to it. For the law says, "By thy words thou shalt be justified." Your word is your starting place, your foundation, your wand. Say now with me, "My words are seeds of good. I speak only what I desire returned." Feel the authority in that. Feel the clarity. Feel the power. For once you govern your speech, you begin to govern your destiny. My friend, there is a spiritual act so simple and so powerful that once a soul learns to practice it faithfully, years of strain dissolve like mist beneath the morning sun. It is the act that ends struggle, quiets fear, clears confusion, and opens the way where there seemed no way. It is the act the Master himself demonstrated again and again, not by striving, not by planning, not by human strength, but by surrendering every weight to the divine. I call it casting the burden. This is not a phrase meant to soothe the anxious. It is a mechanical law meant to free the obedient. The burden is not the problem you face. The burden is your belief that you must solve the problem alone. The moment you release that belief, the problem dissolves or rearranges itself through channels you could never have devised. For infinite intelligence cannot work while human anxiety occupies the field. Anxiety blocks the path. Surrender clears it. And the instant the path is clear, divine order rushes in. I once counseled a woman who had attempted to carry her life upon her own shoulders. Her face showed years of strain in the set of her jaw. Her voice trembled with the fatigue of constant worry. She believed, as many do, that her relentless thinking kept catastrophe at bay, though it was her thinking that kept her in bondage. She said, "Miss Shinn, if I stop worrying—"
Everyone to hear. I released her immediately and stood, offering my hand to help her up. She took it with her good arm, and I pulled her to her feet. The crowd erupted in sounds of approval from multiple species. The medical team rushed in, already scanning her for injuries. Broken ribs, as I suspected. Dislocated shoulder. Multiple contusions and lacerations. Minor concussion. They loaded her onto a stretcher despite her protests. "I can walk," she insisted. "You can also lie down and let professionals handle this." The medic, a healing caste Valoran, replied firmly, "You fought well. Now be smart and rest." As they carried her out, she raised her good arm in a kind of salute to the crowd. The other cadets responded with cheers and various species-specific signs of respect. I stood in the center of the arena, my own injuries minor compared to hers, and watched her go. One of the observers descended from the deck, a high-ranking Quillian admiral whose species had been part of the Galactic Council for over 3 centuries. "Instructor Krelvor," the admiral said, his translator making his whistling speech comprehensible. "That was enlightening. The human lasted far longer than our projections suggested." "The human exceeded every reasonable expectation," I corrected, "and she would have lasted the full 5 minutes if I had not used my body weight to immobilize her. She was adapting to my techniques in real time. Another minute and she might have found a way through my guard." "Surely you exaggerate." "I assure you, Admiral, I do not. That cadet studied my species so thoroughly that she knew where to strike to cause maximum damage with minimum force. She knew which of my joints were already injured. She knew where my nerve clusters were located. She fought with a level of preparation that would do credit to intelligence operatives with decades of experience." I looked at him directly. "And she is not exceptional among her kind. She is merely the first one we have properly tested. There are thousands more like her, tens of thousands, all of them studying us with the same intensity, all of them learning our weaknesses while we underestimate theirs." The Admiral's crest flattened, which indicated concern in his species. "You believe the humans represent a threat. I believe the humans represent change. Whether that is a threat depends entirely on how we treat them going forward." I gestured toward the exit where Petra had been carried out. "That cadet could have tried to cripple me permanently. She had opportunities. When she had my nerve cluster, she could have done lasting damage. She chose not to. She fought hard enough to prove her point, but stopped short of creating a permanent enemy. That shows restraint and strategic thinking. That shows someone who understands that today's opponent might be tomorrow's ally, or tomorrow's enemy. Yes, that too." The admiral was silent for a long moment. High Command will want a full report. R.
Replied, "My dear, nothing real can be threatened. Once you cast the burden, the truth revealed itself." Another woman came to me suffering from confusion about a relationship. She attempted to solve it from every angle, planning, guessing, imagining conversations, anticipating disappointments. Her mind was a battlefield. I told her, "As long as you carry this burden yourself, confusion will reign. Turn it over to the divine and refuse to pick it up again." She obeyed. She said the words each day, not as magical incantation, but as a deep spiritual release. In due time, the relationship clarified itself, without drama, without force. She knew exactly what to do, and she did it with peace. "Miss Shinn," she said, "I spent months in torment, and the answer came the moment I surrendered." I answered, "Fear obscures, surrender reveals." When a person casts the burden, others notice a profound shift. They appear lighter. Their eyes lose the hunted look. Their posture relaxes. Their conversations become calm instead of frantic. They no longer speak of what terrifies them. They speak of what guides them. People begin to sense something unhurried, something centered, something stable about them. Even their presence brings peace to those around them, for a burden-free soul radiates assurance. In my own life, I found that when I cast the burden, solutions often appeared in the most unexpected ways. A phone call I had not anticipated, a letter arriving at the perfect hour, a chance meeting that changed the direction of a project. Divine law does not need my plans. It needs my agreement. And agreement is established the moment I release the matter to infinite intelligence and refuse to reclaim it. Say with me now, infinite intelligence now takes charge of this situation. I cast this burden on the Christ within, and I go free. Speak it until your heart loosens. Speak it until your breath deepens. Speak it until the matter feels as though it has been lifted from your hands, for indeed it has. For once the burden is cast, the miracle is already on its way. My friend, once a soul has learned to cast the burden and walk free of fear, it becomes ready for one of the greatest revelations of spiritual life, the revelation of divine design. For every person is born with a perfect blueprint for their life. A right work, a right place, a right path, a right supply, a right companion, a right purpose. This blueprint is as real and exact as the pattern Moses received upon the mount for the tabernacle. And when a person aligns with this design, everything unfolds with harmony. But when they attempt to force their own plan, they experience resistance, confusion, delay, and disappointment. It took me many years to understand the depth of this truth. I once believed, as many do, that if a person wanted something desperately enough, they could wrestle it into being by sheer determination. But desire alone is not the sign of divine design. The right desire feels peaceful, inevitable, guided. The wrong desire feels frantic, heavy, strained. Divine design never requires self-will. It requires willingness. It requires listening. It requires obedience to intuition. It requires trust that one cannot want what is not theirs by right, nor lose what belongs to them in divine mind. I recall a woman who came to me in great distress over a relationship. She clung to a man who did not cherish her, who brought confusion rather than peace, who withheld affection and offered only uncertainty. She insisted he was the one, for she believed her longing proved the truth of it. She declared she would fight for him, wait for him, and shape herself around his indifference until he finally awakened to his love for her. I listened quietly and then said, "My dear, Divine design does not require you to diminish yourself. What is yours by right will recognize you without struggle. She resisted my counsel at first, for her heart was not yet ready to release the burden. But slowly, through prayer, affirmations, and the practice of casting the burden, she surrendered her attachment. She spoke daily. What is mine by divine right cannot be kept from me. What is not mine now releases me. And as she released him inwardly, life released him outwardly. In time, she met the man who was truly hers by right, one who loved her freely, generously, and with unwavering devotion. She told me later, "Miss Shinn, I nearly spent my life chasing the wrong good." I answered, "My dear, what is right comes naturally. What must be forced is never right." So it is in work, too. Many people remain in positions that suffocate their spirits because they fear leaving the known path. They attempt to force satisfaction where there is none. They say, "This must be my place because it pays the bills," or "I must stay here until something better appears," not realizing that the very act of clinging blocks the better from arriving. Divine design does not keep a person in the wrong place. Intuition begins nudging them gently, then firmly. Circumstances grow uncomfortable, not as punishment, but as guidance. Life becomes too small for the expanding soul. I once counseled a man who felt trapped in such a position. He dreaded his work, yet feared leaving it. He believed security lay in holding tightly to what he disliked. I told him, "My dear, security does not lie in the job. Security lies in divine law." I instructed him to begin affirming, "I have a wonderful work in a wonderful way. I give wonderful service for wonderful pay." He spoke it morning and night. At first, nothing changed externally, but his consciousness shifted. He carried himself differently. He approached his duties with more dignity. His employer noticed. Within a few months, he was offered a position better suited to his gifts, one he had not known existed. He returned to me glowing with gratitude. I said, "You did not create this work. You aligned with the work that was already yours in divine mind." Divine design is like a perfectly fitted garment. When a soul steps into it, they feel at home. They feel recognized by life. They feel guided. They feel strengthened. They feel enlarged. Others notice the change immediately. They say, "You seem more yourself," or "You look so alive," or "This suits you perfectly." For the outer world always confirms the inner alignment. There is a story in Scripture that illustrates this beautifully, the story of Ruth. She did not wander through fields, hoping some miracle would happen. She followed the quiet leading of intuition and found herself gleaning in the field of Boaz, the very place where her future unfolded. She was in the right place at the right time, not through force, but through guidance. Divine design placed her feet exactly where her destiny waited. A man once came to me who continually tried to push open doors not meant for him. He applied for positions unsuited to his nature, pursued friendships that did not bless him, and sought opportunities that drained his spirit. Every attempt ended in disappointment. I told him, "My dear, you are standing before the wrong door. Turn from it and let the right door open of itself." He reluctantly obeyed. He stopped striving. He stopped forcing. He stopped grasping. Instead, he affirmed, "Infinite intelligence now directs me to my right place." Soon after, he met a colleague who introduced him to a new field of work. The moment he stepped into it, everything flowed. He said, "Miss Shinn, I feel as though I have finally come home." I replied, "You have come home to your divine design." When a person steps into their right place, their whole countenance changes. They carry themselves with confidence, not pride. They speak with clarity, not doubt. They appear calm, not restless. Others feel drawn to them, sensing that they are anchored to something higher. Their prosperity increases, for right place carries its own supply. Their relationships stabilize, for right place attracts right companionship. Their spirit expands, for divine design always enlarges the soul. Say with me now, what is mine by divine right now comes to me. My right place appears under grace in perfect ways. Speak it until the old fears fall away. Speak it until your spirit recognizes its truth. Speak it until you no longer chase anything, for what is yours will begin to pursue you. For nothing you force will remain with you, and nothing that belongs to you can be lost. My friend, now that you have stepped into the understanding of divine design, you are ready to learn the method by which divine design makes itself known. The method by which the right doors open, the right people appear, the right messages come, and the right opportunities unfold. This method is older than Scripture, as gentle as the dawn, and as exact as mathematics. I call it the magic path of intuition. Intuition is not a whisper of imagination. It is the voice of God within the soul. It is the still, small voice that spoke to Elijah, not in the wind, nor in the earthquake, nor in the fire, but in the quiet that followed. It is the guiding star that led the wise men to Bethlehem. It is the shepherd's crook leading the sheep to safety. It is divine order speaking in the language of inner knowing. And if a person learns to obey it, instantly, gladly, unquestioningly, their life becomes a series of perfect unfoldings. But intuition cannot enter a mind filled with fear. Fear is noise. Fear is clutter. Fear is confusion wearing the mask of caution. A fearful mind runs ahead, imagines difficulties, rehearses disaster, and tries to control outcomes through constant thinking. Intuition requires stillness. It requires listening. It requires the watcher at the gate to silence destructive thoughts long enough for divine intelligence to be heard. I once counseled a woman who could not hear intuition at all, for her mind was a constant storm. She said, "Miss Shinn, I used to feel guidance, but now I am numb." I replied, "My dear, Spirit has not stopped speaking. You have stopped listening." I instructed her to sit each morning in silence and say, "Infinite intelligence, give me a definite lead." Then she was to wait, not anxiously, not demanding, but with quiet expectancy. The very first week she felt only faint impressions, like ripples on a still pond. But as she continued, the impressions grew stronger. One morning she felt unmistakably led to visit a certain friend. She resisted, yet obeyed. In that visit, she received information that resolved a difficulty she had wrestled with for months. She returned to me astonished. "Miss Shinn," she said, "intuition is real." I smiled, for intuition is not only real, it is the truest voice you will ever hear. Another man came to me who had spent years pushing himself down paths that never bore fruit. He trusted logic, but logic cannot perceive divine timing. He trusted strategy, but strategy cannot foresee divine connections. He trusted human planning, but human planning is blind to the invisible scaffolding that supports every true demonstration. I told him, "My dear, you must stop pushing. You must begin following." I instructed him to speak daily. I follow the magic path of intuition. The next step is revealed, and I obey. Within weeks, he felt guided to attend a gathering he had no intention of joining. There, he met a man who later became his business partner, and who opened doors he had been knocking on for years with no success. The man said, "Miss Shinn, if I had followed my own logic, I would have stayed home." I replied, Logic leads only where it has been. Intuition leads where you are meant to go. The magic path of intuition is always smooth. It may not always be easy, for it sometimes requires leaving the familiar, but it is smooth. It contains no strain, no forcing, no endless deliberation. When one is on the magic path, events unfold like stepping stones appearing beneath one's feet. A phone call arrives at the exact moment needed. A delay prevents a misstep. A seeming detour becomes a protection. A closed door reveals a better one just beyond. Intuition orchestrates these movements with perfect timing. This path also carries a distinct feeling. One cannot mistake it. When intuition speaks, there is a gentle pull, a quiet certainty, a sense of inner lift. It may defy outer reasoning, but it resonates with inner truth. It may appear simple, yet it produces profound results. And when obeyed, it leads always to the right people, the right places, the right provision, and the right expression. I recall a teacher, a diligent, earnest woman, who longed for clarity in her vocation. She believed she must reason her way into right work. She made lists of pros and cons, debated with herself daily, and at night fell asleep exhausted from thinking. I said to her, "My dear, right work does not come through calculation, it comes through revelation." I instructed her to speak. Infinite intelligence reveals to me the perfect plan for my life. One morning, after weeks of affirmations, she felt a sudden impression to visit a school she had never entered. She obeyed. The headmaster greeted her warmly, saying he had just been thinking of hiring someone with her exact gifts. Within a month, she had stepped into work that felt ordained for her. She said, "Miss Shinn, it is as though the job was waiting for me." I replied, "It was. You followed the path that led to it." When one walks the magic path, others notice a striking transformation. They remark on the listener's timing, how they appear at the right moment, speak the right word, take the right step. They sense the listener is guided by something beyond mere intellect. This guidance becomes visible in their composure, their clarity, their confidence. People begin seeking their counsel, sensing the presence of divine order in their life. Intuition also protects. Many have avoided disaster by obeying a quiet prompting to delay a journey, change direction, or withhold a decision. The subconscious, directed by infinite intelligence, knows what the conscious mind cannot perceive. A woman I once counseled felt an impression not to board a train she had planned to take. She obeyed, though she feared looking foolish. That very train was delayed for hours due to an accident along the route. She came to me saying, "Miss Shinn, the voice within saved me." I replied, "It always seeks to do so, if only you listen." Say with me now, I follow the magic path of intuition. My steps are ordered, and I cannot miss my good. Feel the truth in that statement. Feel how it lifts the weight of human planning and replaces it with divine direction. For when intuition becomes your guide, life becomes a guided journey rather than a weary struggle. My friend, when a soul has learned to speak only truth, cast every burden upon the divine, step aside for divine design, and walk the magic path of intuition, something wondrous begins to happen. A new consciousness dawns, quietly, steadily, like the rising of the sun upon a landscape still dim with night. This new consciousness I call the promised land consciousness, for it is the state of inward agreement from which all outward blessings flow. The promised land was never merely a place upon a map. It was a symbol of the inner realm where faith replaces fear, where order replaces confusion, where expectancy replaces anxiety, where surrender replaces struggle. It is the consciousness that knows its good is assured. It is the inner posture that says not, will it happen? But, it is happening now. And the moment a person steps into this consciousness, even with trembling feet, the whole atmosphere of their life begins to shift. I once counseled a woman who had spent years working, striving, battling every condition before her. Her prayers were hurried, her affirmations anxious, her days filled with an inner tension that exhausted her spirit. She said to me, "Miss Shinn, I am doing everything right, yet nothing changes." I looked at her gently and said, "My dear, you are doing, but you are not agreeing. You cannot rise while holding to the old belief that life is against you." She asked, "How do I change that belief?" And I answered, "By stepping into the consciousness where your good is not earned, it is received." This was the moment she stopped fighting and began aligning. The moment she stood upon her decree without wavering, something in her shifted. Within weeks, opportunities appeared where she once saw only obstacles. Where doors had been shut, new gatekeepers arose. Where confusion had clouded her mind, clarity settled like a dove. She told me, "Miss Shinn, it feels as though the world has turned in my favor." I replied, "No, my dear, the world did not turn. You did." The promised land consciousness cannot be entered by force. It can only be entered by acceptance. It is the realm where you no longer pray as a beggar, but as an heir. Where you no longer speak from desperation, but from authority. Where you no longer watch the clock for fear of delay, but trust divine timing as perfect. It is the consciousness Moses carried when he lifted his rod. The consciousness Joshua carried when he commanded the walls to fall. The consciousness David carried when he faced Goliath, not through muscle, but through spiritual certainty. Let me give you another case, one vivid in my memory. A man came to me who had struggled for years to build prosperity. He read every book, attended every lecture, and spoke many affirmations, yet his affairs remained stagnant. As he spoke to me, I noticed his constant refrain. "I am trying. I am doing my best. I hope something changes." These words revealed that he lived outside the promised land consciousness. He hoped for good but did not expect it. I said to him, "My dear, demonstration does not come through trying. It comes through knowing. You cannot hope your way into abundance. You must stand as though abundance is already yours." I gave him a simple decree. I walk in abundance. My good now appears. The change in his life began when he spoke it not as a wish, but as truth. Within months, his finances increased, his opportunities expanded, and he stepped into work that brought joy rather than strain. Friends began to remark on his change. "You seem different," they said. "More sure of yourself, more at ease." He smiled, for he had entered the inner land where struggle ceases. This consciousness also shifts how others perceive you. When a person lives in fear, they move with hesitation, speak with doubt, and radiate uncertainty. People sense it. But when a person stands in truth, their entire presence changes. They walk with calm. They speak with authority. They exude the quiet confidence of one who knows that all things work together for their good. Others feel it instinctively. They trust you. They defer to you. They seek your counsel. They treat you with the dignity your new consciousness commands. I remember a woman whose spirit transformed so completely that her friends asked if she had traveled abroad or undergone some rare ceremony. She laughed and said, "No, I have simply stopped contradicting my prayers." That, my friend, is the essence of promised land consciousness. You no longer speak against your good with fear. You no longer imagine defeat. You no longer rehearse past failures. You no longer shrink from your own desires. Instead, you stand firm upon your word and allow divine order to unfold your path. In this consciousness, delays no longer disturb you, for you understand they are often protections. A closed door no longer wounds you, for you know it is not your door. A setback no longer terrifies you, for you see it as a turning, not a punishment. Even disappointments lose their sting, for you trust that every event moves you closer to your divine design. A man once told me, "Miss Shinn, I used to panic whenever plans changed. But after learning this principle," he said, "now when plans change, I say, this is divine order moving me to something better." And so it was. He lived in expectancy, and expectancy is the hallmark of promised land consciousness. Let me speak now of the spiritual mechanics behind this transformation. When your consciousness shifts, your vibration changes. When your vibration changes, your word changes. When your word changes, the subconscious alters its blueprint. When the subconscious alters its blueprint, your affairs reorganize themselves. This is why I say, your outer world is the echo of your inner agreement. Change the agreement, and the echo cannot help but change. Say with me now, I enter my promised land, under grace. My good now manifests in perfect ways. Speak it slowly. Speak it knowingly. Speak it until your whole being rests in its truth. For once you step into the promised land consciousness, your life becomes a series of divine unfoldings, and nothing can keep you from your highest good. My friend, when a soul has crossed the inner threshold into the promised land consciousness, when it has learned to speak truth, cast the burden, follow the magic path of intuition, and stand unwavering in divine design, something remarkable takes place. It does not happen with trumpets or fanfare. It does not arrive with sudden flashes of lightning. It unfolds gently, quietly, yet with such certainty that even the most skeptical onlookers must confess that something extraordinary has occurred. This miracle is the transformation of identity. You no longer see yourself as the world once taught you to see yourself. You no longer speak as you once spoke, no longer choose as you once chose, no longer shrink as you once shrank. You rise, not by climbing, but by remembering. You remember that you are a spiritual being, governed by spiritual law, supplied by spiritual sources, guided by spiritual intelligence, and protected by spiritual authority. This remembrance is not ego, it is alignment. One cannot hide such transformation, for it radiates through every word, gesture, and movement. A person who once trembled at each new challenge now walks with the composure of one who knows her steps are ordered. A person who once counted pennies in fear now blesses their supply and watches it multiply. A person who once rehearsed old disappointments now speaks only of the good that is unfolding. Others notice this shift long before you do. They say, "You seem different," or "You carry yourself so calmly," or "You look as if some great weight has been lifted." They do not realize they are witnessing the outward expression of an inward agreement. I once counseled a woman who lived for years under the shadow of her own self-doubt. She questioned every decision, apologized for her presence, diminished her talents, and sought permission to be herself. But as she practiced the laws we have spoken of, guarding her word, casting every burden, following intuition, trusting divine design, something within her awakened. She began to speak with quiet authority. She answered without hesitation. She moved with an ease she had never known. Her friends thought she had undergone some extraordinary education. but she had simply come into agreement with who she truly was in divine mind. She said to me, "Miss Shinn, it is as though I have stepped into a larger version of myself." I replied, "My dear, you have stepped into your true self." This identity shift becomes visible in countless ways. Your posture changes, for you no longer carry burdens. Your eyes change, for fear no longer clouds them. Your tone changes, for your words no longer contradict your faith. Your timing changes, for intuition guides your steps. Even your appearance may change, for the body responds to the mind that governs it. People may ask if you have found a new diet, a new routine, a new secret, but the only secret is the truth you have accepted. I am one with infinite intelligence, and divine order directs my life. I recall a man who once lived under the weight of constant tension. His work drained him, his relationships discouraged him, his finances frightened him. He carried himself as one expecting trouble. Every task felt heavy. Every day felt uncertain. But as he learned to walk in divine order, to speak life, to surrender struggle, to follow intuition, his entire demeanor shifted. His colleagues said he looked younger. His friends said he sounded stronger. His family said he seemed more present. He told me, "Miss Shinn, everyone keeps asking what changed, but I have done nothing outside. I have changed only within." I replied, "The inner change always reveals itself outwardly." This transformation also reorganizes the world around you. People who once doubted you begin to respect you. Those who once overlooked you begin to seek your counsel. Employers treat you differently. Friends speak to you differently. Even strangers respond to you differently. Why? Because consciousness communicates without words. A person who knows their worth in divine mind is recognized as worthy in the outer world. A person who expects good begins to attract it. A person who trusts their path walks with an assurance that commands recognition. Consider Joseph in the scriptures. Though cast into the pit, sold into slavery, and trapped in prison, he carried within him the consciousness of one aligned with divine design. And wherever he went, no matter how low the circumstances, he rose, not by force, not by manipulation, but because spiritual authority cannot be hidden. Even Pharaoh recognized it. He said, "Can we find such a one as this, a man in whom the Spirit of God is?" This is what happens when a soul comes into alignment. The world must acknowledge the authority of spirit within you. Your transformation will unfold similarly. You will no longer dread the future, for you will know the future is shaped by your word. You will no longer fear loss, for you will know that nothing belonging to your divine design can ever be taken. You will no longer bargain with life, for you will know that life seeks to bless you. You will no longer cling to what is wrong for you, for you will know that the right always replaces the wrong when you release it. A woman once said to me, "Miss Shinn, I am afraid to change, for I do not know who I will become." I answered, "My dear, you will become yourself." And when she embraced the spiritual path wholeheartedly, she emerged radiant. Old relationships fell away. New opportunities appeared. Her home grew peaceful. Her finances strengthened. Her intuition sharpened. And the heaviness she once carried dissolved entirely. Others said, "She has reinvented herself." But she had not reinvented anything. She had simply removed the layers that were not hers. This is the final truth I give you in this long journey of understanding. When you agree with divine law, you become unrecognizable, not because you have changed, but because you have finally returned to who you truly are. Say with me now, slowly, reverently, "I am aligned with divine design. I walk the magic path of intuition. I cast every burden on the Christ within. I speak only the words I desire returned. I stand in my promised land now, under grace, in perfect ways. Feel the vibration of those words as they impress upon your subconscious. Feel how they dissolve the old identity and reveal the new. Feel how they lift your spirit into a state where miracles are natural, guidance is constant, and blessings arrive without strain. For the truth that took 20 years to learn can be lived in a single moment of agreement. And once you agree, your life rises to meet the truth of who you are. My friend, a remarkable thing happens when the soul accepts its true identity. Life itself begins to reorganize around that recognition. For identity is not merely an inward feeling, it is a vibration, a decree, a spiritual signal that ripples outward through every corner of one's affairs. And once a person aligns with their divine identity, everything not belonging to that identity dissolves, and everything harmonious with it appears. This is why I often say, the outer world must bow to the inner word. Not sometimes, not occasionally, always. Once a man or woman understands this law, they cease chasing results. They cease forcing outcomes. They cease begging for blessings. Instead, they take their rightful place in consciousness, and the blessings come to them. I once knew a young woman who lived beneath her own spiritual stature. She dimmed her light in every room she entered. She apologized for her opinions. She deferred to people who had neither her clarity nor her intuition. She carried herself like a servant when she was meant to move like a queen. But as she learned the laws of the spoken word, divine design, and the magic path of intuition, something magnificent awakened within her. Her speech grew firm, her gaze steadied, her posture lifted. She no longer explained herself. She no longer excused her gifts. She no longer asked permission to be the woman God created her to be. And then a curious thing happened. People who once overlooked her began to seek her guidance. People who once dismissed her began quoting her words. People who once ignored her saw her with new eyes, as though a veil had been removed. She returned to me astonished and said, "Miss Shinn, nothing changed, yet everything changed." I replied, "My dear, you changed, and the world merely adjusted itself to match. This is spiritual law. Identity is destiny, not the identity given by family or history or circumstance, but the identity given by spirit. Once you accept that identity, doors open that were once invisible. People appear who were once unreachable. Ideas arrive that were once unthinkable. Courage rises that was once unimaginable. You become the version of yourself that your lesser thoughts could not contain. Let me share another case that reveals the power of inner identity. A man came to me who had spent his life believing he was unworthy of success. His father had repeated to him in childhood, "You will never amount to anything," and he accepted that decree as truth. It shaped his posture, his tone, his decisions, and every opportunity he failed to seize. When he came to me, he said, "Miss Shinn, it feels as though a shadow follows me wherever I go." I replied, "My dear, that shadow is not following you. It is emanating from the belief you carry about yourself." I taught him to speak a new decree. I am a child of God, richly endowed and divinely equipped. At first he spoke it mechanically, for his subconscious resisted. But repetition is the sculptor of belief. Slowly, his mind accepted it. His vibration lifted. His shoulders straightened. His eyes brightened. He acted as though success belonged to him, because it did. Within 6 months, he entered a position that matched his true ability. Within a year, he surpassed every expectation placed upon him. And within 2 years, he was recognized publicly for his excellence. People who once doubted him said, You've discovered yourself. But he had not discovered himself. He had remembered himself. This is what I now tell you with certainty. The person you long to become is not far away. They are simply waiting for permission to emerge. And as you give that permission through your words, your conduct, your obedience to intuition, and your agreement with divine law, the transformation unfolds naturally. The world will mirror your new identity in endless ways. A friend who once criticized you now speaks to you with respect. An employer who once overlooked you now trusts you with greater authority. A relative who once doubted your direction now praises your clarity. A stranger you meet for the first time speaks to you as though you are someone of importance. Why? Because you have entered the vibration of importance, not human importance, but divine importance. The importance of someone aligned with their purpose. Even the atmosphere around you changes. Your home becomes peaceful. Your habits become orderly. Your desires become purified. Your time becomes meaningful. Your days unfold with direction. Your nights rest upon calmness. A woman once told me that after she embraced her divine identity, even her neighbors began greeting her differently. She said, "Miss Shinn, they look at me now as though I have stepped into another realm." I smiled and said, "My dear, you have. For when identity shifts, everything shifts." The Israelites could not enter the promised land until they ceased seeing themselves as grasshoppers. In the realm of spirit, identity precedes inheritance. Once they believed themselves strong, the land opened to them. So it is with you. Your promised land, the life of abundance, purpose, harmony, and joy, waits upon your acceptance of your true identity. Let me speak directly to your spirit now. You are not small. You are not powerless. You are not forgotten. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not unlucky. You are not limited by what has happened to you. You are a spiritual being, equipped with intuition, protected by divine law, supplied through infinite channels, and guided by a design that cannot fail. Repeat with me now. I step into my divine identity. I remember who I am in truth. All that belongs to me now appears under grace in perfect ways. Feel how these words settle into your subconscious. Feel how they unlock doors within you that no human hand could open. Feel how they lift you into a higher vibration, the one from which your new life begins. For when the identity shifts, the destiny unfolds. When the inner man rises, the outer world bows. When the soul remembers itself, miracles become the natural rhythm of the day. My friend, you are not becoming someone new. You are becoming someone true. And once you live from that truth, you will never return to the smaller life the world once handed you.